There's a famous story that every software engineer should read before they accept a senior role. It's about a mid-sized company that couldn't figure out why their build system was still working. You see, they had moved offices years ago. They had a sleek new cloud setup, a modern CI/CD pipeline, and a team that followed every best practice in the book. But there was one legacy service, a critical configuration manager that nobody had migrated. They assumed it was running on some forgotten virtual machine in the cloud. Until one day the system went down. They checked Oz, nothing. They checked Azure, nothing. They spent 12 hours scouring their own infrastructure, but they couldn't find the IP address. Finally, a senior dev who had been there since the early days had a hunch. He drove back to their old office building, which was now a half-empty warehouse. He went into the basement, and there, sitting on a dusty shelf next to a stack of old chairs, was a single, humming PC. The building's network hadn't been disconnected. The power was still on. And for 3 years, that one forgotten machine had been the silent heartbeat of a multi-million-dollar company. This is the ultimate horror story of technical debt. But it's not just about a physical server, it's about cognitive debt. In the world of product engineering, we often perform modernity. We talk about Kubernetes, microservices, and AI-driven observability. We spend our days in clean, abstract dashboards. But under the hood, most companies are held together by a ghost in the basement. A piece of code, a hard-coded API key, or an undocumented process that everyone is too afraid to touch because they don't actually understand how it works. We think we're coders when we're building the new, shiny stuff. But the moment you enter a real-world codebase, you become an archaeologist. I once worked at a startup where we had a file called Global Utils Final VTWO.js. It was 4,000 lines of spaghetti code. Whenever a new dev suggested refactoring it, the CTO would shut them down instantly. "We don't have time," he'd say. "Just add your logic to the bottom." We were performing productivity by shipping features in record time, but we were actually building a structural support beam out of cardboard. We were taking out a high-interest payday loan on our own sanity. And just like that server in the basement, eventually, the bill comes due. A product engineer knows that the most expensive code isn't the code you're writing today. It's the code you're ignoring today. They understand that seniority isn't about knowing the most frameworks. It's about having the courage to walk into the basement and shine a light on the ghosts before they bring the whole house down. This brings us to the clarity moment. The human impact of legacy ghosts isn't just a technical crash, it's fear. When a team is afraid to touch their own codebase, they stop innovating, they stop taking risks. They spend 80% of their time firefighting instead of building. Professional clarity is realizing that documentation is an act of empathy. Writing clean, understandable code isn't about looking smart. It's about making sure the person who comes after you, or your future self 3 years from now, doesn't have to drive to a dusty basement in the middle of the night to save the company. So here is my question. Where is the basement in your project? What is the one file or server that everyone assumes just works but nobody actually understands? Don't wait for it to break. Be the engineer who finds it first. Let's get clear. See you in the next one.